Hello my art-loving friends! Today we are going to be looking at these Old Holland classic watercolors. I showed these in my massive art haul and it is time we tried them out. I wanted to show you the tin and how it came before I completely tore it apart and changed everything. So here's the box, and the back of the box only has the pigment names and numbers. This comes with 15 tubes. It's a very nice metal tin, 4 big mixing slots there, and the usual fold out here in the bottom. Here are the tubes. They were all pretty until I was messing with them earlier, so sorry that they're out of place. That's better. But you can see they are small 5mm tubes, and on the tubes is only the chemical name for the pigment. So luckily Kimberly Crick did a chart and she cross-referenced all of the names, the chemical names, and gave us actual pigment codes for them because that's what we're used to. I don't know, some of you may know the chemical names of all the pigments, but I do not. So thankful to Kimberly Crick for that. I will link her website below. So if you pour all these out, the bottom of the tin has place for holding the tubes, and it's basically just a little push rivet in, and you can actually just yank that out. I'll be yanking that out so that I can put full pans in there. Just in case you want to see that, I'll show you. You just have to get something that can pry that up, and you gotta be careful if you're concerned about the rest of the tin not to bend any of the other places, but you just pry up real close to those little push rivets. I don't know what they're called officially, but that's what I'm calling them. And this pops right out. And then you have the nice bottom of the tin for putting all your full pans, half pans, whatever assortment of pans that you would like. And I will keep this one in because it's kind of nice to have a place for a brush. When I was filling all the full pans, I had 3 of them with binder separation. You can see that in the clip there. That is the yellow ochre light. And I did take a toothpick and really stir it together, and you can see when I finished, it's all together. However, it does separate again later, and I'll show that to you. Unfortunately, I drop it right now sideways. Paint falls out, and I have to clean that up. But I did have those 3 with the binder separation that I just stirred together with the toothpick, like I said, and they separated again, which was unfortunate. But here's what the palette looks like with them all filled and those 3 stirred up. It looks quite nice. However, the paint's very liquidy right now. I believe it's been about a week since I poured these, and I want to show you a few things. There were 3 of these that had big binder separation, and I mixed them up really well with the toothpick till they were nice and smooth. There was no color separation when I just let them sit, but you can see in this one that the binder did separate again. So hopefully that's not too big of a deal. It kind of feels like it left an entire film on top of the entire color, maybe like a 1/16 of an inch. Let me see if I touch it. These ones with the binder separation ones are still soft, whereas these other ones, they're still shiny, but I can touch them and they are still soft underneath, but I can touch without getting anything on my hand. This is another one that had the binder separation. I stirred really well, and it does seem like it also has about a 1/16 of an inch of stuff on the top, but this one I can touch a little bit easier. Nothing came off on my finger. This was the last one that had binder separation. This is the cobalt blue. This seems like it has less of a film on the top, but it did separate. You can see that in the pan. And it's very sticky. It didn't come off on my finger, but it did pull out of the pan when I just touched it. Scary. The ultramarine blue is drying up nicely. It's still soft underneath, but I can touch the top just fine. This one looks very wet, but let's see if we touch it. I'm scared. Okay, nope, it's got a nice film on the top. I can press pretty hard. Phew. What about this one? Prussian blue is almost completely firm. Ivory black is still really soft underneath. Ooh, that one is very soft. Burnt umber. So for these to be fully dry, they're going to need a lot more time. It has been raining a lot here in Colorado, so we're usually pretty dry, but not lately. We'll see if these 3 with the binder separation give us any trouble when we're painting, so let's just get to swatching. We're starting with the transparent Chinese white. This is a PW4 and it reminds me a lot of Rembrandt's transparent mixing white, which is, they say, a PW6, which doesn't really make sense. But anyway, this being a PW4 does make sense, just something you can use to dilute your colors or to make them a little bit more pastel. It's kind of neat to do that instead of just using water because you might get them too thin. I don't know. It gives it a different look and sometimes that's nice. This is the Gamboge Lake Extra PY153 and a PY151, and this is a surprising color. I'll tell you a little bit more about that, but I think you can see in this swatch how brilliant it can be. Quite pretty and really became one of my loves later in the video. Next up, we have the Yellow Ochre Light. This is the one that had that binder film over the top of it, and you can see I am having trouble getting it up on the brush, and I think this is just going to be a trouble color anyway in the future. It does say Yellow Ochre Light with the word light in it, and it lives up to that word. However, once the water sat on it again for a minute, it was a lot more reasonable to work with. It was a PY43. This is the same kind of deal. Raw sienna light, very low tinting. It's a PBR7 this time. This one didn't have a whole lot of binder sitting on the top of it, but it still didn't want to come up on the brush very easily. So this is one that would benefit from dropping some water on it a few minutes before you want to start your painting. And I'm leaving the brush going into the pans here in a couple of these so you can kind of see how it is fighting me or working with me. Some of them are really easy to re-wet, but some are not. This next one is Burnt Sienna. It's another PBR7. This one re-wet a little bit more easily than the previous two, but it's still not quite as easy as I would like. However, it does have a beautiful hue. And if you've been around for my swatching project for this watercolor database that I've been doing in the past, you know that I usually use salt on these swatches, but I totally spaced the salt this time, and it's fine. I have been debating this whole time whether I want salt on them for the whole time or not, and I just forgot this time. I'm not going to redo them with salt, but it is kind of neat to have the salt because you can see if they react, because some colors just don't react to salt, and you can look back in your database later and know that. This one is Burnt Umber. It's another PBR7. I really like the hue of this Burnt Umber, and this one re-wets okay. It's kind of somewhere in the middle between hard and easy. After the Burnt Umber, we have the Cadmium Red Medium. This is our usual Cadmium Red PR108, and this does have a beautiful, gentle granulation. It is also extremely high tinting, and you can see how gorgeous of a red this is. One of my favorite Cad Reds out of them all is this one. Reminds me a lot of my favorite pigment PR254, actually, except this one has some granulation, obviously. This is quite the name. Rose Doré Madder Lake Antique Extra, and 3 pigments no less, plus this one is hard to re-wet and very low in strength. So it is a PR177, a PBR23, and a PR168. It's an interesting color. It's just light, very light. And you can see after water sat on it for a minute there that you can get a little bit more pigment going. So this is a gentle red. Alizarin Crimson Lake Extra. Does anyone know why they use the word extra in all of their pigment names? Let me know in the comments below. This is a PR177, a PBR23, and a PV19. So it's the same 2 first pigments as the one before, the Rose Doré, all of that word, except this one has PV19 at the end and the other one had a different red. This one is Emerald Green, PG36, PG7, PY74, and a PW4. I am curious why they put this color in the set. I'm curious what they think it's going to be used for, and I am also curious what I will end up using it for. The white really comes through. It makes it quite opaque. This one is Scheveningen Green Deep. It's a PG7, so phthalo green. And it definitely looks like a phthalo green. It's quite pretty. Next up, we have what is traditionally one of my favorite blues, Cobalt Blue. This is PB28. This one is quite granulating and it is a beautiful hue. It came off the pan pretty decently, more decently once the water had sat on it for a moment. You can see that here, but that one's just gorgeous. Followed by French Ultramarine Light Extra. Here we have extra again. Sorry that was blurry, but it's clear now. PB29, so your usual ultramarine pigment, and it is highly granulating too. However, the granulation in all of these paints just seems really smooth and beautiful. In fact, all of these laid down smoothly and looked quite nice, which is not most people's, well, I should say, it's not some people's experience with this brand. This is Prussian Blue Extra or Parisian Blue Extra, PB27. Pretty typical PB27. This one definitely is one that fades in light, but comes back for sure when you put it back in the dark. Ivory Black Extra, PBK9, and I like it. It's fine. It's a black. I don't know. What else is there to say? So once I finish all of the swatching, I lay these aside to dry completely, and I pull out my Caddy Fat Book, or Caddy Fat Book, however you say that. I have just a few paintings in there and a couple of swatches. Very briefly have started this sketchbook, but it's one that I love to use because it's just so fun. And I wasn't exactly sure what to paint, so I usually go to my default kind of a sunset theme when I don't know what to paint. And I had a limited amount of time too, or I probably would have picked a more serious painting, something bigger, maybe like on a 9x12 or 12x16. But you can see there the paint is spreading. I can't remember which one. That's probably the cadmium red medium. Well, you can see the palette off to the side, but I didn't happen to pay attention just now. But that Gamboge Lake Extra is extraordinary. You can see how deep that gets. That's just pulling it straight out of the pan and adding it on top of the red that's down there, and it's making that beautiful deep orange. It's intense. And now I am using a little bit of the Rose Doré Madder Extra, and then I'll dip into the Alizarin Crimson, and I will add some blues at the top to kind of make a purple later. Now the painting experience using the Caddy Fat Book will be different than the painting experience you would have if you were using a paper like Arches or New York Central Supply Company or the Mead & Cotton paper or the Bauhong cotton paper. I love all of those papers, and it's a unique experience, like I mentioned. So if you think that the paint looks weird or anything like that, it's not the paint, it's the paper. You can see those little darker dots in the sky in the blue and the red section right next to where I'm brushing right now. And that's just the paper kind of having loose fiber. And it's kind of a neat look. When it dries, it looks really interesting, and it actually makes the paint look kind of pretty. But if you go over this paper with your brush too many times, it can start to eat it up. So you do need to be careful and gentle, but it's pretty extraordinary to work on. It's a whole different experience that I find extremely enjoyable. Now, as far as the Old Holland paint here, the only paint that I'm having trouble with that I've used out of these colors so far was the Rose Doré Madder Antique Extra, whatever that is called, because it's hard to get it off of the pan. But look at that Gamboge Lake Extra. Every time I use that, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so incredibly strong and incredibly beautiful. It has such a nice hue to it. And you can see I'm lightening it up there, and it's just a really pretty kind of creamy yellow, and it can go to this deep orangey yellow. Oh, it's gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. So I would say if you were going to cherry pick a few colors from this brand, the Gamboge Lake Extra, the cadmium red is simply stunning, and the Prussian blue is really nice as well. So those would be the ones I would recommend out of this set. I kind of like the burnt umber too, but it's a little bit hard to re-wet. But you know what? My core dark brown, which I'm not sure if that's a burnt umber or if they call it by a different name, but the dark brown in my core set, core being the brand QOR, is also a little bit hard to re-wet. So it's not just a brand thing. It could be a pigment thing, which is pretty typical, but anyway, I know some other companies will add honey and whatnot to make that process a little bit more easy, but that's just my say on these so far. So I have shown this to you in real time, but I am going to speed up the rest of it because it's kind of boring. It's not the most, I don't know, interesting process, but you can see I am trying that Meeden paintbrush out again because I wanted to see if I really do like them, because my initial impression of them is that I do like them. They handle water, like the water load, a little bit differently than my Princeton Aqua Elite brushes that I'm used to, so I just have to remember that when I'm using them. I think the water load is less, I guess. I don't know. It's just a different feel than other brushes, and I still love the fact that they come to such a nice fine point at the end. You can get really fine little details even if you're using the bigger round, which I'm not in this case. This is the medium round that came in the set, but I am enjoying them so far. It's just weird how light they are. They have no weight to them at all, which is kind of an interesting feel in and of itself. And here I'm just using a variety of the dark colors and mixing them together to get a dark color without just using black. I did mix the black in a couple of times just here and there, but barely, because I really like having the purple shine through, and in this case more of the green shining through. In the background trees I have a lot of the brown umber shining through. And this paper is really neat too, because I have a couple of harsh lines in the lake, but you just rub at this paper a little bit and it basically erases the lines. Any lines you don't want, it can get rid of. So I like this paper for that. It's super easy to fix things. And some birds, because we have to have birds. And then I decided to do some mixing here. So I'm using the Rose Doré Madder blah 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 and just adding some of the different blues in. This one happens to be the Prussian blue, and then I mixed a little bit of the cobalt blue. This is the alizarin crimson mixed with the French ultramarine. And that's cadmium red mixed with the cobalt blue, and then the French ultramarine. I'm getting some beautiful purples here, and I'll show these up close to you later. And this is the cobalt blue. I think that's still the Rose Doré Madder blah blah blah, whatever that name is. This is the alizarin crimson again, mixing that with the cobalt blue, and then pulling it out so I can see it, and then the ultramarine blue. That one turned out sure pretty. And then I wanted to see what I could do for green. So that's the cobalt blue with the Gamboge Lake Extra. Gorgeous. The ultramarine blue with the Gamboge Lake Extra. Love that one. I was trying to show that separation in color there because it really granulated. I missed what that one was, but hopefully you saw that. This one is the phthalo green mixed with the alizarin crimson because I wanted to see what kind of gray I could get. Usually you can mix a red and a green and get, well, red and a purple, really, and get a beautiful gray. I didn't have a purple, so I kind of mixed the red in and maybe a little bit of the blue. I missed if I did the blue or not, but now I'm trying the raw sienna with a couple of the blues, and I'm getting some very granulating, earthy colors that might be good for fields or rocks, and wow, that's sure pretty. That's the ultramarine blue, and then I'm mixing them with the different browns, the burnt sienna and the burnt umber, because you can get a nice gray with that usually. This one's highly granulating though, so you don't want to use that for smooth areas. And then I wanted to get oranges. That Gamboge Lake is just so brilliant though. I think you need to add a lot of water to your mixes if you want a more subtle orange. And then I was just not quite done with my curiosity about colors mixing together, so I was just filling in the slots here, and maybe in the future I'll come back to this page and put some doodles over it and actually make it look like a more intentional doodle page. But in the meantime, the mixes were pretty interesting, especially when they dried. They're very pretty. This paint is actually really pretty. It just is, a few of the colors are difficult to work with. I have a class starting at the college next week where we're going to be painting on bigger size paper. So usually 12 by 16 or larger. And I thought about bringing this paint in to do one of those paintings, but I kind of had a panic moment when I did that. I was like, oh, I don't know, because the browns and the yellow ochre raw sienna are really, really hard to use. There's not a convenience purple or orange or greens that I like. And I don't know, but we'll come back to that in a minute. Here are the swatches dry. They're just pretty smooth. Like, these are some of the smoothest swatches I have seen come out on the paper. This is Arch's 100% cotton paper, 140 pound cold press. You can see the granulation in that cobalt blue. And look at the granulation in that French Ultramarine Light Extra. Quite pretty. That Prussian blue is really nice looking as well. Very subtle granulation, but it's there in the cadmium red medium, plus a beautiful hue, very opaque, very light for that rose doré madder. Alizarin Crimson Lake Extra is a nice color as well. And then we have the ivory black and the transparent Chinese white there at the end. And I'm just bringing you back up to the French Ultramarine Light Extra so you can take another look at the granulation, that and the cobalt blue next to it. And if we pan out and let the camera focus, this is all the colors in that set. A lot of earth colors that don't work very well. Here's the painting a little up close and personal. I like it better after it dried. You can see the sky looks really interesting. I had a little ultramarine and a little bit of that cad red in there, and that granulation kind of came through. Pretty. I like the light colored mountains in the background. Here are the mixes a little bit up close. Once they've dried, they looked a little bit more purple when I first created them, so they did dry more on the red side, but look at that one, that's my favorite. And some of that green, like, wow, that green with all the separation of the yellow and green, oh, beautiful. And the grays definitely dried more blue than they were when they were dry. So you have to keep that in mind. Go darker than you think you need to, because the purples also dried quite a bit lighter. The one that worked really well and stayed about the same was the one I mixed with the phthalo green and the red and a little bit of blue. That big long one going off to the right. Well, that wraps up Old Holland watercolors. I am a little intrigued by them and a little disappointed with them all at the same time. There's no light fast ratings or any kind of staining, opacity, or anything like that on the tubes or on their website, but they claim most of their colors are light fast, at least according to Kim Crick's website. Remember, I will link that page below that she did featuring these watercolors, so you can cross-reference that and read her opinions on all of this and make your own decision. I will link these below if you are interested. I think I bought them at Jackson's or Jerry's. I can't quite remember, but they were really on sale when I got them, and I'm glad, because I would be sad if I had paid full price for them. They're kind of expensive watercolors. I do like the palette I set up. I like the space between the full pans, and I made a swatch sheet for it with my Patreons, which I have a fun Patreon site. If you want to check that out, I will link that below as well. Well, thank you so much for joining me for today's video. I hope it was useful and informative and entertaining, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye for now. Wrong kitty. Get this other kitty. Jack? He's gone. Wait, here he comes. Oh, incoming. Ah. He kind of ignored her. Oh.